Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to the Brewing Business Show. This is a space dedicated to the craft beer industry and entrepreneurs who wants to learn more about mindset, health, wealth, business, and of course, beer. I'm your host, Pedro Meneses, and before we start, I just want to make sure you buckle up, crack open a cold one, and get ready to hear some life-changing information. Cheers. So welcome back everybody to episode 18 of the Brewing Business Show. If you're a first timer, be sure to check out the previous episodes and do me a favor and go leave me a review on iTunes so you can help more people to find the show. And today, I have the pleasure to have on the show a very well-known writer and influential woman in the craft beer industry that needs no introduction. You know, her name and work alone speaks about her reputation and important contributions to the craft beer industry. So I want to jump right into the episode because we have a lot to cover. And she has a very important message to share with us, especially in the important role women plays in the industry. So welcome to the show, Terry. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Pedro. Thanks for having me.
No, it's an honor. You know, I know a lot of people knows you and your work, and it's an honor to have you here. I'm sure my audience is really excited also to hear what we're going to talk about. We're going to drop some F-bombs and some truth bombs, and we're probably going to piss some people off. But who cares? You know, like I said before we started the show, right? We're going to speak the truth. I'm going to piss a lot of people off, but that's how it is, right?
Sure it is. It's pure,
anyway,
man.
Yeah, so we're going to start a little bit with your story, your background, so people can get to know a little more about who's Tara before we can get into all your expertise and knowledge and the importance of women in the industry. So talk to us a little bit about where you come from and your background and how you got to this point.
Yeah, sure. So starting from when I was little, I wanted to be a TV journalist. So I was for about 10 years, and that's how I got to the Philly area. I've lived all over the country. I've lived abroad a couple times. And so after 10 years in TV news, I was done. And in 2005, I switched over to freelance journalism. I did some documentary production. And my biggest client when I went freelance was the Philly Tourism Bureau. And 2005 Philly was one of the epicenters of American craft beer. I argue that it was the East Coast epicenter of American craft beer. Boston argues with me sometimes, but you know. In the 90s, you know, and also I went to college in the 90s in Boston, and that's when I started drinking what we called microbrew at the time. So there was amazing beer in Boston in the 90s, but in 2005 it was Philly. Anyway, I digress. So, you know, I'd been reading all this advice to journalists saying that it's a good idea to sort of create a niche for yourself, establish credibility in one subject. And so I looked around and I decided that beer should be it. There were very few female beer writers at the time, and I've been drinking beer since I was a toddler, to be honest, sipping off my cans of brand Budweiser. You too? What were you drinking when you were two?
Oh, well, no, I grew up in Guatemala, so I remember when I was like 8 years old, my dad used to always give me sips of his beer. You know, like we have a national beer, like it's a really popular, and it's actually really good. And that's what that's what my first experience with beer when I was like 8 years old. So
yeah, it's the same thing. So I developed a taste for it. My mom would yell at my dad sometimes once I got to like sip 4. That was enough for my mother. So 2005, I decided I'm going to focus on beer. And there was a ton to write about at the time. And there has continued to be a ton to write about. I mean, it's always evolving. Like, look at all the things that we get to write about now related to craft beer, you know, the business of it with COVID, how brewers are pivoting. And then, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement, you know, how brewers are trying to embrace that or not. And so it's just endlessly fascinating. And I really think that beer is an amazing lens through which to look at society. Because society influences beer and beer influences society in turn. So it's this really cool kind of cultural writing that I get to do that goes far beyond, you know, the hops, the malt, the yeast, and the water.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I don't want to touch in what I'm going to say right now, but it is very curious how you just said, like, focus on one niche, and that's how you've been developing your business and how you have create your name, you know. And that's just a good reminder for people that have listened to this show that that's some topic that we've been pounding over and over again, how it's important to focus on one target and start from there, and then you can start diversifying. But you know, I don't want to talk on that because we've been talking about that very often. But now you mentioned a lot of stuff, and I want to jump right now into the women in the industry. I think that's a very important topic, and maybe we can wrap it up a little bit with the Black Lives Matter movement, because I think there's a lot of stuff going on, and you mentioned also something very important. There's a lot of breweries out there trying to, should we participate? Should we not participate? I want to hear your opinion first, and then I will share mine. So yeah, let's start with the women in the industry and what important role they have right now.
Oh, okay. Women in beer. At this point, I would suspect that, I hope the sun stays away. Sorry about all the glare. At this point, I would imagine that most, if not all of your viewers know that women were the first brewers. And not just the first brewers, but the second brewers and the third brewers and the 300th brewers, because what happened was that throughout every single major civilization throughout the course of humanity, women have been the first brewers until something happened, and those something happening usually came from religion, politics, or capitalism.
Yeah.
And one of those three forces, sometimes alone, sometimes in combination with one or two of the others, decided collectively, not like there was a conspiracy, but those forces put men into the brew house and kicked women out. Usually it was because, there was some sort of technological invention that made brewing profitable, or, the guilds were only for men, and so the women couldn't participate in capitalism anymore, etc. So that's the past. What's happening in the future is that if you have, and Pedro, I think this is true with almost like any CPG, consumer product good, if you just have like a homogeneous group of people writing the recipes, coming up with the marketing, doing, the packaging, you're only going to appeal to one group of people, and that's pretty limited. And as we see so often now, you also risk offending people who are not in that select group. So when you bring in women into the industry, when women open their own breweries, when women develop their own recipes, become leaders within the companies, things change. And, I'm a little biased, but I think it's almost always for the better. Just a different perspective, a different set of eyes is important in a society, in a business that isn't, or at least shouldn't be, geared toward just one segment of society. And I think why this should matter to every brewery owner, regardless of their values or their politics, is that it represents money. Even before COVID, everybody was freaking out, like beer sales are going down, craft sales aren't growing nearly as much as they used to. What do we do? What do we do? Well, the obvious thing to me is to tap into markets that are underserved. Obviously, we've got new 21-year-olds being born every day, or being new people turning 21, you know what I mean? But that's limited. So when you have like an entire, I wrote an article about this a few years ago, and I thought it would get a lot of traction, and it really didn't, disappointingly. I wrote an article about how Mexican American millennials were like an ideal market for craft brewers to tap into for all these reasons, and it just didn't go anywhere. And so, if you're not reaching out to women, if you're not reaching out to drinkers of color, then you're really limiting your revenue. Beyond that, it's just the right thing to do.
I think that's a great answer, because like you said, if we're in business, it's about making money, right? You didn't get in business just to have a halfway ass business and not make a profitable business and not provide to your family, to your employees. In that case, you don't own a freaking business, you own a job. That's pretty much what it is. So I think what you just said is very important to understand, because not only to diversify and include women and include people of different genders or different skin colors and different cultural backgrounds and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's something that can apply in any aspect of business. Like if you know how to do beer, right, and you're good at it, that's great. But if you don't know how to do marketing, how you don't just diversify to somebody that can do that marketing for you and help you be more profitable, right?
Absolutely. And this, I think you'll find interesting. I want to talk about labels, beer labels for a minute, and beer
Mhm.
names. You know, I don't get offended easily. There are some beer names and labels that people hold up as being very offensive that I understand they don't personally offend me. So that's my caveat. However, I've been talking to some people recently who have really changed my mind on this in some fascinating ways because, again, if we're talking about wanting to have as many people as possible drink your beer, it stands to reason that you don't want to do anything to potentially alienate them, right? So if
Right.
you think about labels that some people call out as sexist or names that some people call out as sexist, and your response is, oh, you're so thin skinned, whatever, just don't drink it then. Okay. But
Yeah.
then that woman who finds herself like kept out from buying your beer because it just doesn't speak to her and it feels a little wrong and icky, maybe, is probably going to tell her friends, men and women, maybe post it on social somewhere. And the fact is, like, fine, go ahead, defend your territory, First Amendment, as long as the TTB approves it, have at it. But there's a difference. Somebody said this to me recently, and I think it's a great point. Just because you and your buds think it's funny in your garage, and maybe it is funny, it
Right.
doesn't mean you need to put it on your commercial product for sale out in the general market, you
Wow.
know? So it gets offensive, fine, but like you're losing money. You are losing sales by doing that. So it's really, a new way it was a new way for me to think about it. And I get kind of lectury sometimes, so I'm sorry if any of you guys feel like I'm lecturing you, but I get kind of
No, I don't think
passionate.
you're lecturing nobody. I mean, you're speaking what the truth. If nobody like it, they can just get off the stream. That's it.
They can piss off.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, and that's the whole point. Because like I was telling you before, uh, we need to start speaking what's real out there. Like
Mm-hmm.
including other people in the industry. And right now you were giving the example of like uh, consumer, right? Like somebody who gets offended about a label or something like that. What about in the workspace in the industry?
Thank you for bringing that up. Excuse me, I have to cough for a second. This is a huge point, and I'm actually coming out with a story about it in a couple days. For so long, the sort of conventional wisdom was craft brewers are crunchy, beautiful hippies, yay. We respect all people. I didn't really understand until I'd already been writing about beer for a couple years that unfortunately a lot of that is bullshit. Um, you know, yes, are we better than a lot of industries as far as being inclusive and egalitarian? Yeah, in some ways, but there's still a lot of good old boys left over from, pre-craft beer who are making decisions, mostly in distributors. And I don't mean to pick on distributors because it's really not limited to these good old boys who've been
Right,
selling Coors for 50 years, right? It's
right,
not limited to them because even within craft breweries, the trauma that a lot of women still face today is intense. And nobody's been willing to talk about it until now. And even after Me Too happened, there was still a lot of fear to talk about it because, obviously it's like a small industry. And if you speak out against one employer, your fear is that you could get labeled by others as a troublemaker, right?
right,
And then not be able to work in the industry again. What I'm hearing from a lot of women is that they're leaving the industry because they just can't freaking take it anymore.
right.
And I think it's really important that we recognize and keep talking about that. And the story that I'm going to publish in next week or the week after talks about the fact that I wrote a Forbes story about sexual harassment and violence in the industry. And I published it, it was like March 13th.
Right.
And my sources and I were excited. We thought that it was going to create this huge conversation. And of course, like 4 days later, the whole world got shut down because of coronavirus, and the story basically like disappeared. And now, there's so much else to talk about that I can't even say that the spotlight moved on from the women, from the harassment industry, because it was never on it. But
Right.
I want all of us, especially the writers, the beer writers, but everybody in the industry, to sort of not lose sight of that. There is so much further we need to go for women to feel safe in this craft brewing space. And that comes from having like actual HR departments with real training, managers who don't just say suck it up or put sale, what happens a lot too, and if I'm babbling, sorry, let's say you have a female sales rep
Right.
and she goes into meetings with distributors or accounts and she feels harassed in some way, and she comes back and says, I don't want to call on that account anymore, I don't want to work with this guy at the distributor. And she'll be told by the manager, often a man, this is another reason it's important to have women in managerial positions, were you sure you weren't just being too sensitive or something? And they just sort of brush it out, brush it under the rug because they're afraid to lose that
Right.
relationship. And that's very unfair to current and future women who might want to be in the industry, because we're leaving. I mean, we're really legitimately leaving the industry.
That's only going to hurt everybody. I believe it's going to hurt every single one if people just keep living, no matter if it's women, if it's people of
Mm-hmm.
color, of other cultures. uh, it's going to hurt the industry because, like you said, women represents a very important role in these industries. I've always be that way, but the problem is that nobody has talked about this kind of thing, so nobody knows about it. And so I'm glad that we're talking about this and we're challenging someone's mentality right now,
Yeah.
because that's how we start making some change. And you're someone who is in touch with a lot of the cultural part with the consumer. You experience that on a daily basis. That's why you're a writer, right? And I'm sure you understand a lot about uh, the problem that this can cause in the future. And not only very important for women, but in everybody else that is being excluded from the industry at this point.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, think about what we were just talking about a second ago, reaching out to new categories of consumer. I believe that if I'm a female or I am, transgender or whatever, I may feel more comfortable being approached by a salesperson um, who can speak to me, who's more like me than like some bro, who might mansplain. And I know not everybody's a bro and not everybody's a mansplainer, but you get the idea. I mean, the more people we can have in the industry who look more like the consumers we want to attract, I think the better for overall revenue.
And I totally agree with you on that, because I've been in sales for a long time too. And I used to have in my previous business, I used to have a lot of employees, and some of them were gay people. But they had a hard time dealing with me, not because I didn't like them. I loved them. I'm still in touch with them. As a matter of fact, one of them was in my house last week. We went out and had beers and stuff like that. We had a great time. But like you said, my approach, my I don't know if it's my tone of voice. I always sound like very rough guy. So for
Oh,
them, it's a little bit intimidating. So it's like
sure.
I need to find another way so we can all be on the same page. And I don't want you to feel threatened by me just because the way I speak, the way I address myself and all those kind of things. And that's very important in every aspect, because even for example, other service providers like marketing and people trying to do websites and all that stuff, I've been having many conversations with these people trying to help the industry too. And like I always say to them, like, listen, we can collaborate. And the reason why we can collaborate is because my perfect customer is not your perfect customer. The people that is not going to align with me is going to align with you, and you're going to be able to serve them. This is not about, I want all the industry for me and I want to take everybody and I'm the only one doing marketing. No, because there's people that they're not going to be a good fit for me, right? So there's someone out there that can be a good fit. What we're going to refer them to them. So I think that applies in every aspect of sales and distribution, at the tap room, everywhere. So I think it's a great point.
Thank you. Yeah. Before the call, before we got on, we were talking about some of the topics you wanted to cover. And sorry if I'm skipping ahead for a second, but collaboration is something that I think everybody in every industry can really collaborate, can really benefit from going forward. So we can get back to that if you want, but yeah, finding good partners to collaborate with who share your mission, but maybe do something a tiny bit different, is a good way to sort of be creative in figuring out how to move forward out of this confusing chaos we're in this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was saying. Like if you start having people that is living the industry that can be a good asset for the entire industry and bring more people from different markets and all that stuff, it's just going to hurt everybody. And I want to hear your opinion on something, because I think this is very, very important. And the reason why I know you can give us a very, very good answer is because, again, you are a writer. You write about the entire things going on in the industry. You see from the inside and from the outside perspective, right? And right now, that's one of the biggest controversies, right? Like, should I participate with the movements that are going on? What can I do? I'm afraid to say something that is going to piss a lot of people off. My opinion is very straight. It's like, if there's something like on a label, for example, right, that you're trying to be inclusive, but it's going to offend somebody, because you're trying to be inclusive and trying to do the right thing. You should be grateful, because that means that you are repelling the wrong customer for your business, because eventually the people that complains about a label is the same people who's going to leave you a bad review, because they're just dickheads. That's what they are. So I want to hear your opinion about like that fear that should I be inclusive? Should I do this? Should I follow what everybody else is doing? What's your opinion on that?
That is such a good question. And, I struggle with that on an individual level. I'll get into that some other time, some other place. But as far as breweries are concerned, yeah, it's a very delicate balance. And I do think that the community at large is looking to their local breweries to say something. As long as what their local breweries are saying is in favor of Black Lives Matter, for instance. I don't really recommend saying things publicly that go against the current zeitgeist, even if you believe them, because ultimately, I think it's not going to go well for you.
Right.
So I'd say just sort of keep that opinion to yourself and tell your employees that they can't be putting that stuff on their private social media either, because that absolutely reflects poorly, right or wrong, on your brewery.
Right.
So yes, I do think that breweries should make statements, but, and here's a huge but, I don't think it can be disingenuous or flimsy. I think that it really needs to be backed up by action.
Right.
And so if I'm a brewery owner and it's never really occurred to me to, ingratiate myself with like the Black community, for instance, or try to find ways to, bring more Black employees in or whatever, now is the time. And it's really like an amazing opportunity. Again, going back because for all the reasons we talked about. And then once you have those relationships established, you can ask the people who you're afraid of offending if this blah, blah, blah is going to offend the community. Obviously, everybody's got different opinions. One employee of color can't speak for everybody, but at least you're asking somebody. Right. You're getting an opinion from the inside. And that way you kind of know what a good direction would be to go in. And not every brewery is necessarily going to want to integrate more with communities of color in the same exact way, because all the communities are different. Your vibe is different, whatever. Your model's different. But it is certainly important that if you don't already have those relationships, to start making them, because if you just say Black Lives Matter on your social, you're still going to get called out. Yeah. So you might be sitting here saying oh, well, then I can't win. Well, yeah, you can if you do something about it. If you make authentic efforts to change, well, if you haven't been doing it before, to change in a positive direction. And if you have been doing it up till now, kudos, you're way ahead. Maybe you could help your local breweries that you're friends with, like with some ideas of other ways they can do it. And speaking of collaboration, I'm a really big fan of the idea of brewery owners reaching out to organizations that represent other communities that don't look like the owner.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, we can't really like have meetings in our tap rooms right now or anything, but if COVID weren't an issue, I think it's an amazing idea to, so like I'm a white chick, I live sort of in the city, sort of in the suburbs. So if I were to reach out to like some organizations here in Camden that represent Puerto Ricans, for instance, because there are tons of Puerto Ricans in Camden.
Yeah.
Tons of African Americans in Camden. Like, what are some of those organizations? Can I invite them to have a meeting over some beers and like a social gathering and a chat at my brewery? And maybe if we can't do it live, do it over Zoom. Like invite Black artists, Black musicians, whatever, and then continue the dialogue.
Absolutely.
That was a really long answer.
No,
Sorry.
but it was a great answer. I really appreciate that answer. I think you really nailed it, because it is. I mean, I'm seeing this from a different perspective now, and it's helping me understand different things too. Because you see, our conversation from your perspective is from someone who is a writer, who's have a lot of experience, right? My perspective is from business, from marketing, from all that kind of stuff, and I just see the correlation between everything, because it's the same. Like if you haven't done anything, just shut up, just stay quiet and don't mess things up more than already is this year, But the problem why many people cannot speak to their audiences or more people in their communities is because there's no segmentation in their business. There's no a marketing plan. There's no sales plan. There's no systems and processes that can be established so you can put that message out there. But I have seen many breweries that they have a consistent message. Like hearing in Fort Worth, there's a brewery called Four Corners, right? And I don't want to say something wrong, but I think the owners are Mexican, and the names of their beers are like with Mexican names, and it's really, I love it. It's really fun, and they have, when they were open, they're having like traditional Mexican games and all that kind of stuff. It was amazing, But they did it. They do such a great job that even that their names and everything is focused to like a Mexican market, Still, there's a lot of other people out there that reach out to them and goes to their brewery because they have segment their market. They know how to speak to the white people, for example. They know how to speak to the Latin people. They know how to speak to other audiences. So they do a great job, But it starts with the business plan. It starts with knowing what you need to do. Don't just put stuff out there,
Yeah, that's so true. Right. And you make a good point. Like, if you're not going to back it up, just shut up. Like, it's better to be called out for not saying anything.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
saying something stupid or saying something and not backing it up. And, you gave me an idea. Like, I think that Brewers Guilds could do some things to teach breweries how to make their audiences and their staff more inclusive by, like, let's say the Texas Brewers Guild, for instance, asked the Four Corners people to give a talk, on the things they've done to make it so that whether they are Mexican American or not, like the things that they've done to be very inclusive of the Mexican community and also know how to talk to the white people. So I think that there are breweries out there doing it right. And there's a lot that we could learn from them, and I bet they'd be happy to talk about it.
Yeah, I believe so too. And even if there's nobody out there that can give that example, I mean, that's the thing, like there's many people in the industry right now trying to help outsiders, people trying to do video marketing, people are trying to help them how to create content. We have a whole online menu system that is all automatic, and we try to do all this stuff, but the resistance is there,
Yeah.
Because, what is all these motherfuckers out of the craft beer industry trying to sell us marketing services? Like, we're not trying to sell you shit, man. We're trying to help you. Like, we're trying to help. That's what we're doing. Like in the same way you're trying to help right now, exposing the reality of what's going on with women in the industry and all that kind of stuff. And I know, and moving to the next point, I think this can be a good transition, because I just read your recent article, and I saw you made a couple of posts about this. about the sales right now in the industry, about the economic impact in the
Mm-hmm.
industry, because a lot of people think that the sales are soaring and the brewers are doing great. But I want to expand more a little bit into that so we can start to transitioning to the economic part.
Sure. Well, I doubt this is a mistake that anybody watching has made, at least people in the industry. I mean, you guys in the industry know for the most part your sales are not up. But I'm sure like Pedro and I, you've seen these headlines and heard people talking about alcohol sales are booming. Everybody's getting drunk 24/7, you know, and it's just simply not true, because when you really look at the numbers, you have a couple things happening and it's super complicated. But on the surface, what you have happening is that with all the on-premise closed and this new experiential third premise, if you want to sort of separate out barbershops and movie theaters and festivals and such, we can just call them all on premise for now. Like that's all shut down. So a lot of that volume has transferred over to the off premise. And, you know, at the beginning we did see stock ups and brands doing well that haven't been doing well in a long time. Fantastic. When it comes to beer, the off premise growth is not evening out what was lost in the on-premise. Wine and spirits is different. Wine and spirits volume-wise is okay in the off-premise. Beer is not. Now, that doesn't really matter if the dollars aren't there, right? So while volume is making up for itself kind of, dollars are not at all. I mean, the estimate is that dollar sales in the on-premise, dollar sales in the on-premise have dropped 90%.
Wow.
90, right? And I'm surprised it's actually not even closer to 100, but I live in New Jersey. We were really shut down, and I know maybe some states weren't nearly that shut down. So, okay, I guess some bars are still open out there somewhere. So we would need the dollar growth of beer in the on-premise to consistently be 73% to make up for that 90% loss in the on-premise. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Should
absolutely.
I say it again? Yeah, it does. Okay, so the dollars aren't there. They're not anywhere close to that. I mean, you've seen in your own tap rooms, if you've got tap room models, you know, tap room dominant models, that, you know, that's gone to zero. And so it's awesome. Some breweries have actually said that they are making more now than they have been before, but I think those are few and far between, because everything that you've been able to do to make up for the losses has been creative and resilient and amazing. And as we all have seen, like, we haven't seen this tragic collapse of the craft brewing industry that we've expected yet. And we can go into that too. But as you know, if you've been able to pivot into more packaging and such, and maybe be able to sell into some off-premise accounts that you weren't in before, maybe you weren't even doing that at all before, that is awesome, but still none of that makes up for generally what the losses are, because, you know, you're not selling any kegs anymore, so you don't get those margins. You're not getting the margins from your DTC to the, you know, over the counter from your tap room, and you're paying more for packaging than you were before for crowlers or kegs. And so economically, brewers are in bad shape. And the problem is that most people think it's the opposite. And so I'm afraid that breweries are going to lose this intense community support that they have, because people have really, even like macro drinkers, have like wanted really to support their local craft breweries. But if they think you're doing awesome, then they'll go back to drinking Schlitz. Do I date myself by saying Schlitz? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't see myself drinking Coors anymore anytime soon.
No. Not us, but you know, some people. And you know, two other problems real quick with this misconception. If policymakers believe that everyone in the alcohol industry is doing well, then they're going to be less inclined to support the industry financially, or with these, you know, opening up of regulations that we've seen, which, you know, we all want to continue. So it's very important that policymakers know what the reality is. And as I said in the story, somebody brought up the good point that, you know, I don't think anybody in the industry is out there like hoping to turn anybody into like a heavy drinker. And we all agree, like, you know, over drinking is a problem. So I'm not encouraging over drinking in any way, but some forces that are anti-alcohol, like some temperance organizations, and if you don't think it can happen, it can, because in England right now, drinking is getting bashed like crazy by all kinds of anti-alcohol organizations. So it can happen. Those organizations can sort of take advantage of the confusion and people thinking that we're all sitting around getting drunk all day and saying, oh, this is bad, this is a terrible thing that's happening. And then that gets to the policymakers, their lobbyists, you know, convince the lawmakers that they should enact more restrictive laws, and then we get back to everyone loses money.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally agree with you, you know, but I think it's important to, yeah, I mean, start putting this out there more. And that's what I wanted to bring it up here, you know, because I think it's important. Even when I see it from the marketing perspective, when I see breweries doing great, you know, I know why they're doing great, and I know why the others are doing not so great because of the COVID and all that kind of stuff, right? But it is important, I believe, too, to start understanding that the industry has changed, you know, and you know, I always like to say this. I feel like the craft beer industry right now is like the real estate industry back in 2008 or 2007, that you would go to a real estate agent and tell him, hey, dude, you know, you can sell 10 more houses on using Facebook. He'll be like, get the hell out of here, man. You cannot sell Facebook for my family and friends, you know? And eventually now everybody's doing business on Facebook, right? I believe that craft beer industry is getting into that transition also, and to start adopting a little bit more of e-commerce, you know, and
Yeah.
people is buying beer online. And I mean, even that is, yeah, it's true. The sales are not soaring, but people is buying beer online. And a lot of the questions is like, yeah, but nobody wants to buy from me. No, you have to understand that you're not the only business advertising out there. If you are, if you're not, you're screwed. But if you are, you're not the only one. And there's consistency and there's time to put your business on there online. You know what I mean? What's your opinion on the e-commerce aspect right now that we're seeing?
You know, I ordered alcohol online for the first time in May. It was wine. I was craving wine. Sorry. But I was in New York City and I didn't want to go into a store, so I ordered and it was amazing. I mean, 3 bottles of wine showed up in this nice bag like 3 hours later, and I didn't even pay that much more for it. And so I think that this e-commerce has had a turning point. I mean, I don't see why people who have successfully and happily ordered beer or any alcohol online would stop doing it. You know, hopefully they'll make it part of their mix, you know, still go to bars, still go to tap rooms, whatever. But I don't like to leave my house. If I can get stuff delivered here, whether it's from the brewery, you know, in the next town, or from a local liquor store, I'm happy. And I think that a lot of breweries are realizing that they do need to boost those offerings on their website. Don't you think? Have you ordered online?
I have ordered online, or I have ordered to go, you know, and it's been great, you know. And what happened is that for what I know from marketing and all that stuff, we've been over 60 days into this new normal, right? So there's a new habit created already. So people is more online, people is more looking stuff. Everybody's talking to their computers and to their phones right now, you know. So I think, like you were saying, it felt great to order and have the wine delivered to your door, right? And I believe that having an e-commerce for breweries, or starting implementing more of that in the industry, can help in the sense of, yeah, you can order beer online because you don't like to leave your house. But what about the people who is busy? You know, like say that I have a meeting and a Wednesday night I want to go to the tap room, but I don't have time because I have a lot of stuff to do at home, I will have an app or like have the option to go to my favorite breweries page, see the menu,
Yeah.
order, pick up on my way home, and go home with my beer, you know? So those are options that if you don't put those options available for your customers, especially for your repeating customers, you know, like the same guy that goes on Wednesday to your brewery is busy on the weekend with family, he can just order beer from your brewery too. And that's 2 times that your customers is buying from you. How much that will change your sales at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so true. And I was thinking about this the other day when I needed some stuff from Target. And I didn't feel like going in and walking around Target. And so the possibility that I could order it in advance and then just have them bring it out to my car like you're talking about,
Yeah.
it's fabulous. I mean, I could get so much more done in my day. And so I think that across all consumer segments, that's going to be something that we do more often. Now, the fear of that and everything related to COVID is that a lot that our social sort of networks might weaken, you know, because
Yeah.
we'll be interacting with humans so much less. And, you know, that's a potential problem. But at least as far as convenience and time, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying people will stop going to the tap rooms, you know, after we go back to normal, you know, but I think it's important just to have that stream of revenue, you know, like I was putting the example with the real estate agents, right? Like now they do all their business online. I'm not saying that craft beer industry is going to be an online business, but if you have that part of your business,
Yeah.
it's gonna be different because we just starting. You know, it's gonna be a process for the entire industry to adapt, to have online sales and beer to go. And hopefully, I really hope that a lot of states that are allowed to deliver right now, they can keep pushing to keep that. You know, because that's gonna be huge. Delivering beer to go and curbside, that's gonna be huge in the future. I believe. You know, every single industry is being affected by the internet and social media, and I believe the craft beer is not gonna be the exception. You know.
I agree. And, you know, there's some fun, creative ways that breweries can use delivery services. And I've seen this happening once in beer. I don't remember who was doing it, but basically like breweries planning a beer dinner, for instance. And, you know, if you're a local craft brewery, you can only do it in your local area, but, you know, put out your menu, and then you can deliver the entire thing to people who sign up. You can have a Zoom beer pairing dinner with the beers, with the food you've prepared. You could bring in a black chef, you know, I mean, bring in a black jazz musician. Like the possibilities are endless. And one thing that I've seen done on the spirit side, in case it gives anybody ideas, is this event company started hiring out of work bartenders to deliver, like they have this long menu of cocktails. And let's say I'm a boss and I want to have like a motivating Zoom happy hour for my employees. So I schedule it. I can order a couple different cocktails, and then these bartenders drive around LA, and it's in a couple cities, drop off the ingredients, like really pretty garnishes, and then at a certain time, all those employees log into a dedicated link, and the bartender's there doing a mixology workshop, and everybody's got the ingredients right there, and they're doing it all together. I mean, there's so many fun things that, again, like can be part of this mix. Like, doesn't mean leave anything behind that's already working, but like there are these new ways of doing business that I think are really cool and innovative.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. You know, like the sky's the limit. And I think the internet have opened all possibilities for any type of business. And, you know, I know right now the industry is going through hard times. I know a lot of people is suffering, but I think there's something to learn here. You know, that's something that I always been that way. Like if like that's how it's life in business. You know, like there's ups and downs. You lose money, you win money, you have wins, you have losses. It happens. It's a roller coaster to be a business owner, right? But there's always a lesson to learn. I think there's very important lessons to learn during this time that whoever adapts those lessons are the ones that are going to thrive next year and the next 5 or 10 years too. You know, that's what I believe. But now moving a little bit more, let's talk to us a little bit about your book.
Oh, thank you. So I have a book dropping next fall. The working title is, actually, two of my friends just criticized this, but I don't care. I like it. The working title is Don't Worry, Darling, You Didn't Burn the Beer. And it will be the first book to exclusively chronicle the history of women in brewing around the world, and those themes we talked about a little earlier in the show about women being the brewers until capitalism, religion, and or politics kick them out. That's the angle. So I'm spending half of the book talking about all these different civilizations and the way that women ultimately got marginalized, and then the other half of the book looking at the U.S. craft beer movement, past, present, and future. And I'm really, really in love with early craft brewing history. So it's been just a huge joy to talk to women who were involved in the late 70s and the early 80s who have been completely forgotten to history, because again, we've done it even in craft beer history that the few women who were involved, we don't know their names, you know. And so I'm setting out to change that and look at how we can move forward and make it, you know, as equitable and as like amazing a community and industry as most of us think it is.
I love it. I think that's going to be great. You know, I think that's how you start changing things, you know, because like we were talking before, like, should I do this? Should I post about the Black Lives Matters and all that kind of stuff? I believe that or we include everybody, or we just don't do anything. You know, we can't just decide, oh, let's go with these people and let's forget about the women. Like, I don't think it's going to work that way. So I'm glad you're doing that, because I mean, there's something else to achieve in any industry, and I think that can change a lot, you know. And I'm sure women are going to be very grateful about this project and this book.
Thank you. Thanks. And you know, that made me think of one other thing, and I hope you don't mind me throwing this in because you didn't ask, but
oh, go ahead.
You know, thinking about women of color specifically in beer, they're out there. And you know, I am guilty of this myself, that, you know, I know a couple of the sort of like OG Black women in beer, a few, but there are more. I mean, there are Black female bloggers and Black male bloggers. There are many more Black-owned craft breweries in this country than I was aware of. And so, yeah, I just want to highlight that they exist, and they tend to be very active on Twitter. Black Beer Chick, for one. Beer Culture with the K is another one. And so there are Black female writers out there talking about beer, and I encourage everybody to check them out.
Yeah, I think I have one or two Black women in my Facebook that they write stuff, and I think they're doing great things. But we should probably talk after the show. Maybe you can introduce me to them, and I would love to have them in the show, you know, and come drop some bombs too, because you know that's the whole point of this, to have a voice for everybody, you know, and speak what is happening and out there, no matter if somebody gets pissed or like.
And actually, I think I just said one of their names wrong. Sorry, it's Afro Beer Chick. Apologies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would love to put you in touch with some of them, because I've just been talking to some of them more recently for the story I'm working on for the book, and I'm just fascinated. And some of them are having a hard time feeling like people make them. They tend to have very thick skins, the people I've talked to, but I'm hearing a lot of stories of them going into breweries and being made to feel like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? You don't belong. Like, it's 2020.
Yeah, come on. Knock it off. No, you're right. You know, you're right. I have experienced a little bit of that because I'm Latin, you know, but I guess my resting bitch face make them turn around right away, you know, so I really haven't been experienced that much, but I have noticed that sometimes. It's like, you know, actually one of my first encounters with a racist person was here in Texas, you know.
Okay.
Like, it was a year ago, and I came here for work, before I moved here, because I just moved here to Dallas in November last year. So I came here and I was at a BJ's restaurant and I went to sit in the bar and the guy next to me, it's a white person, just looking at me like, oh, weird and stuff. And he literally was trying to move me away from him. And it's like, suck it up, dude, because I'm not moving from here. You know?
Uh-huh.
But thank God I haven't experienced something worse. But I
Okay.
have noticed sometimes the looks and all that stuff, and then just that resting bitch face look, and that's it. It's over. You know?
What about when you go to craft breweries? Have you ever felt weird? Because
Not in craft
you
breweries, at
don't?
least not yet. Yeah, not yet. Thank God. You know, if not, I probably will say something. But at this point, I haven't. So
Okay.
that's a good thing. And you know, at some point, I also don't pay attention to those kind of things sometimes. You know, like I
Right.
don't. Probably something worse happened already, and I haven't even noticed. So
Yeah.
I'm focused on other things. But if one day I notice, I'm probably gonna speak about it. You know, because
Uh-huh.
I really it's not. But like I said, I'm standing in a position where like if it's all of us or it's nobody. You know,
Hmm.
like that's how I see it, because we were talking before, like if we want to include women, we need to include everybody too, you know. If but
Hmm.
we cannot just make exceptions of people, and especially with women, that is probably the people who have suffered a little bit more in the industry for the past 20 or 30 years that you have explained, you know. So
All of
but
us
and
or none of us is a good slogan. Does that belong to anybody yet?
I don't know, but we should probably buy a domain right now. All of
Exactly.
us or not, not,
No
yeah,
one
exactly.
listens.
Yeah, that can be a good slogan, you know, like, because that's the thing, you know, and I think that's a problem. I'm not trying to get into politics. We're almost here for an hour, so we're going to start wrapping up, but I'm not trying to get into politics, but I believe that's a problem right now. It's like we want to defend a group of people, but we want to forget about the other ones, you know, like you cannot
Mhm.
just pretend to, in my opinion, like go out there and say Black Lives Matters and you're a bad person with your family and you treat your spouse like shit, you know?
Mhm.
That's my opinion. So if you're gonna want to respect someone's life, start from respecting people in your house too first, you know, your spouse, your
Yeah.
significant other, uh, your kids, your friends, women, everybody, you know. So that I believe that's a problem. You know, we're being hypocrites at some
Mhm.
point. I believe it. So but anyway, that's this is not a show for politics, and but I needed to put it out there. You know, I like to spice people's mind. But anyway, um, well, we're almost here. We should start wrapping this up. I just have two more questions for you, okay? And then
I'll be
we're done
quick.
with
I'll
this.
I'll be
Yeah,
short. Yeah.
that's okay. We're good. We can keep going for another hour if you want. But first of all, I want to know your opinion or some advice that you can give to my audience and the people in the craft beer industry. Um, kind of like your prediction for the next 6 months. Like we started this July 1st, you know, we starting the second half of the year. I believe it's important moment. For me, it's important. This day is important because whatever I do today until the end of the year is gonna determine if I'm gonna have a successful year or not. You know,
Yeah.
so I want to hear your opinion and what kind of prediction do you have for the 6 months? Best advice
Hmm.
you can give them, you know, in order because I believe that take this in consideration for your answer. I believe the shit show is gonna keep happening for the next 6 months. You know, I think that's what's gonna happen. But it doesn't mean that we cannot thrive. It doesn't mean that we cannot make money. It doesn't mean that we cannot grow as people and end up this year better, you know, and celebrate on New Year's and get drunk. And the second, where people can find you.
Okay. Yeah. What you're saying about July 1, I hadn't thought of that. I'm kind of moved by that thought. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about things that we think craft brewers should do. So, you guys have definitely heard my advice. um, Maybe too much of it. Uh, I mean, you know what? I think maybe two things would be most important that um, can set people on a positive path, and allow some more success. I think it's don't be afraid to self-evaluate. and whatever that is, because a lot of blockage I think that we have in society with all these issues we've been talking about and with so many more is people are so, it's like the idea of like male fragility, right? And I'm not putting men down, but that's the expression. Just like we tend to be very fragile as Americans right now and so defensive and like holding on really tight to our beliefs and evolve or die. You know, sometimes it's scary or sad to try to consider what it is that you could be doing better within your own self, like you're saying. You know, start with yourself and like be open to the fact that a lot of people have a lot of different experiences that are just as valid as yours, and just because you haven't seen them doesn't mean they're not there. So just be more open to accepting what's outside coming in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the corollary to that is, I think, getting back to the idea of collaboration. You know, it goes along with listening. Listen to what other people are doing that you could, you know, you could borrow their ideas and partner with them so that together you're stronger. I'm going to make myself cry. I need a beer.
I need a beer too.
And, where to find me. So my name is Tara Nurin, and that's pretty much where you can find me on most social media is at that tag. So TARANURIN. My website is taranurin.com. And on Forbes, you can just Google my name, and Forbes, it's just the easiest way to do it. And popping up in publications all over the place, writing about these issues we've been talking about.
That's awesome. I think you nailed that last question. You know, I really appreciate you being open, you know, and I really appreciate you being real in this show, you know, because I cannot keep stressing enough how important it is for me that people get real in this show, you know, like let's just talk about what's the real problem, you know.
Yeah.
And what you were saying about the July 1st, you know, I'm just big in mindset and all that kind of stuff, and actually develop myself as an entrepreneur, and it's just the reason why I think it's important is because, you know, we started a new decade, right? And everybody in January 1st was like, this is going to be the best decade and the best year of our lives, right? 3 months into it, and we're like, what in the world is happening? You know, it's the end of the world, you know, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But I think when you take care of your mind, put away yourself from the news, from media, from social media, and start working on yourself and refresh your mindset, I think a lot of things can change. Like you said, like see what others are doing. One of the reasons why I have guests from other industries too in this show, because success leaves clues. And like a couple of months ago, one of my guests was a friend of mine that he had a supplement company, and he turned that supplement company into an 8-figure hand sanitizer production during the COVID, you know, and something that many other brewery could take that example and do the same at that back there, you know, when some breweries were trying to do hand sanitizer. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I think great advice. I really appreciate it. But most important, how real you've been in this show. Thank you so much for being here, Tara.
Thank you very much. And thanks to all of you guys for listening and watching. Good luck.
I hope they enjoy the show. And if you got offended, like, come on, don't be soft.
Yeah. And you know, I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. If, you know, it's hard, like we said, like not being, well, you're a person of color. I'm not. And so sometimes I say something and I'm like, oh no, did I come off wrong? So anything I said that might have accidentally been offensive was like totally unintentional.
But you know, it is not that way. You know what's funny? What most of my friends are white people, and in our circle, you know, we always joking, like we do like racist jokes and stuff like that. But you know, I don't get offended. Like you can throw some jokes at me, and like people can bully me, and I'm just gonna bully you back, and I just gotta have a lot of fun. That's just how I roll, you know. But I believe that's a misconception. Like people, I don't think get that easily offended. I think just what society is trying to tell us right now, like don't say this because someone is gonna get offended. Come on, dude. Like we're humans, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, But anyway, thank you so much for being here, Tara. And for you guys listening, if you enjoyed the show, make sure you share it with somebody, put it on social media, send in a DM, a text message, email, whatever you can do to help us spread the word. And also make sure you leave us a review on iTunes or subscribe to the YouTube channel so more people can find the show and get access to all the valuable information. And lastly, if you're ready to grow your sales and take your brewery to the next level, make sure to head to onlinemenu.marketingbrewingco.com and watch the free video on how you can sell more beer online. I will see you guys for the next episode. In the meantime, be safe, keep working hard, and cheers. Later. Hey guys, thank you for watching. This show was brought to you by the Marketing Brewing Company, an industry-leading marketing provider and coaching firm. If this episode have provided you with valuable information for you and your business, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you know somebody who needs to hear this, share it with them. Send me a text message, a DM, put it on social media, whatever you can do to spread the word. And lastly, if you're a brewery owner ready to take your business to the next level, make sure you head to marketingbrewingco.com and fill out the form to get started and get your free assessment of your current marketing and sales strategies. I will see you guys for the next episode. In the meantime, cheers.